Welcome to Business Technicalities. I got Sean and Jamison here because we have some more fun things to talk about. Some different ideas that Jamison came up with, and Time Zest, and what's the other one? I've already forgotten.
Nextrat. Yeah.
Nextrat.
We'll talk about a bunch.
A little bit of that and some entrepreneurship and the conversations about the challenges of running a business. I almost think sometimes I should record beforehand because sometimes we have some fun conversation before. I should record and then we'll use some of that. But sometimes we have to save some for the show, so that's where we're going to start. So how you doing, Sean and Jameson?
I'm great. I'm glad that Jamison found time, considering
you're in Nashville now, right?
So it was 2 nights ago, Denver. Now I'm in Nashville for Robin Robbins. I'll be in DC on Friday. So I'm running around the country a little bit right now.
The hustle of getting a business started is something I don't think people are really prepared for. When I see technical people want to start businesses, one of the first questions I always ask them is like, what's your pipeline for getting customers in? What's the marketing methodology you're going to do? And none of them think about, I'm going to jump on a flight, do 4 legs, to be in Vegas one day, Nashville the next, and everything else. But that's the reality of it. When you have a B2B product you want to get in front of people, it's not as magical as these. I always see these overly sold. Just build your SaaS application. Everyone will just use it, right? It's a little bit more to it than that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And actually let's go into this real quick. Let's talk about Jamison. So, and I'm not going to say everything about you, dude, because we wouldn't have time for any other conversation other than me telling every your accomplishments. But on one side, selfishly motivated from Connectwise, you're a 2-time judge for Pitch It and a 1-time winner. So 3 years of Pitch It happening, you've been involved all 3 years, and you're going to be involved for the 4th year as a head coach. So I'd say that's pretty impressive for one.
I'm excited. I'm just honored to do it. Right. So as being invited the first time to go and be a judge was exciting. So I really got some great exposure to kind of how it all works, and it's evolved and it continues to evolve. I'm excited for this year because it just looks a lot different.
Absolutely.
And better, in my opinion. So I'm excited about what you're doing with it, and happy to be here and be part of it. Appreciate
that. And also being a winner too. Let's take away from the judging and being a head coach. You also won. So I think this whole YouTube channel is about business technicalities, about issues and challenges people have in starting their business. So here you are, you've bit the bullet, you've applied for something like that, you've won, you've judged, you've coached, everything else, and you're doing it still today with other businesses as well. So a little bit of feedback, a little bit of understanding on what you've done.
On the winning and kind of how that worked out. Yeah, I have to say, the concept of Time Zest specifically. So I actually should back up a little bit. I sold my MSP that I owned for 21 years in 2016, right? And so I was, I like to say I started when I was 6 years old. That's my joke, but it's not true. I started a software company called Teamatics with a business partner in Seattle, and we did really struggle. We never really made a success out of it. I divested myself 2 years later, but we had applied for and were going to try to get into one of these startup competitions or something down in the Bay Area, try to get into some. So I worked on a pitch deck. I had a lot of feedback from folks in my EO forum and my EO chapter. I was in Seattle at the time, moved to Las Vegas. And the first as you know, Sean, I acquired 4 MSPs, and the first one I acquired was owned by a guy named Brad Benner. And that guy is brilliant. He left the business right after I acquired it, and Smileback was his idea. He'd created a couple companies. I was kind of coaching him, but I took the CEO role at Smileback when I left Teamatics. And shortly thereafter, he had another idea, which was Time Zest. So Brad was really the brainchild behind both Smileback and Time Zest. I took the CEO role of both of them and invested a little bit. And Time Zest was really just amazing in that the idea had more legs than I realized. So when it came to pitch it, we just developed some initial messaging. I had all of the pitch deck experience from my Teamatics days, right? From trying to build this other company and trying to apply for all these accelerator programs. And it all just came together swimmingly. So it was a nice win. And we realized the reasons. It's part of the pitch, partly the pitch, partly the product, partly the marketing, the messaging, and just getting it all together was exciting. It didn't hurt that I probably had some experience on a stage. It all just came together wonderfully. And that money I think what helped us, and we've talked about this a little bit, Sean, what helped us a lot is we knew how to use it. I was an experienced entrepreneur, so I knew how to use the money, and we've really, it became the foundation for us being able to bootstrap and grow as fast as we have.
I think there's an important aspect I want to touch on, though, is even see your position is as a biz development on this and things like that. And this is where some people have a good idea, but if they don't have the business sense around it, it's not like you're giving it up. You partner with someone, you appoint someone to be that. Even myself, it took me longer than it should have to realize I should put someone in charge of running my business because I'm better at the technical side than I am at some of the business development. And by doing that, it's allowed my company to grow substantially more. And it's one of those things, I didn't surrender control. I actually make more money and still maintain a high level of control. So it's not about the control factor people think it is. It's more about finding the right person who can, you can be brilliant, as you said, at developing the product, but you knew what to do with the money, because the guy has the idea, doesn't necessarily go, I don't know what to do with a pile of cash. Like, how do I market this and things like that? And that's where you really brought the product to actually be used by people. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I'm not a developer. I couldn't write a line of code. If you put a gun to my head, I wouldn't know what to do, right? So, what my role was always a bit on the finance, and people are that's what I do. And I'm not your typical e-myth entrepreneur, right? So we talk about this. I always call them e-myth entrepreneurs. E-myth's a real thing, right? In most of our world, the MSP world is e-myth entrepreneurs. They're mostly engineers and technicians and technical folk who didn't go to business school and find themselves, they created a business out of a job, right? And now they're struggling to figure out what to do with it. And that also, a lot of these vendors, a lot of the software vendors in the space, people who are doing Pitch It, they're usually ex-MSP owners. And most of the folks that have been in Pitch It have been ex-MSP owners. Not all of them, but most of them. And that makes sense. I'm here at the show talking to people as I'm going, the stories with everybody here at this show that I'm at today. Most of them are ex-MSP owners. And very few of them went to business school. They learned at the school hard knocks, right? And and if it's your first go round and you don't know how to build the business from a finance perspective, from an HR perspective, from an operations perspective, sales and marketing, all you know is how to write code or fix a computer, you're in trouble. So, you can't get from here to there on just those skills.
Right. Yeah, the MSP owners are people who've seen the problem, want to solve a problem. And that's sometimes as far as they are.
But let's go back to, okay, we know plenty of MSPs. We know plenty of MSPs that don't do well in business at all, ever, and never learn to grow. You transform from an MSP to a vendor and find success on both, apparently. So how did you do this, first off? Actually, let me back it up. What were some of the mistakes you made during the course of this?
Oh, bajillion, right?
Give me the worst one.
The worst mistake I made. The worst mistake I made was doing acquisitions on the MSP side. And I wrote, I didn't write about it in the book necessarily, but we have a little bit of a case study that starts to touch on it. I did an acquisition that I got cocky. My first one I call them the good, the bad, and the ugly, and they were in that order. And I did an acquisition that nearly lost me my business of, at the time, 19 years, right? So, wow, you do one and you get, I will admit it. I think I got so excited about how the first one went that I started to ignore the red flags, because I was like, I can do this. I got cocky. I can buy and turn around anything, and nearly lost it all. And it was my fault. It always is, right? So you have to take accountability for everything's going right. You did. Everything's going wrong. You did. So I made some big mistakes there. That's the worst business mistake I ever made.
What were the red flags? So what were the red flags that people should notice?
Oh, it's just really looking back, a couple red flags. Some of them are just financial due diligence, just trying to cut corners, move fast, right? So there were some due diligence issues. I'd say, though, the big red flag was just culture difference. And it's very, very difficult in an acquisition to do due diligence on culture. It's actually the most difficult piece, right? Like, you don't walk into a business you're contemplating acquiring and introduce yourself to people's staff as a potential buyer of the business. So it doesn't work that way usually. And so sometimes it can be very, very hard to know what you're getting into.
I think that's something that can't be overlooked. And we had ourselves an acquisition that didn't happen the way it originally was planned a few years ago. It happened later in a different way. We realized by working on projects together with another MSP, there was some real culture conflicts with some of the employees. Like my staff and their staff did not get along very well. And me and the owner, who I thought I got along with having lunch dates with, but hey, he was cool to hang out with over lunch, but he certainly was not cool when you really got to the nitty gritty of it. And we later acquired the business without him because we realized he could not be part of it because he had some temper issues, if you will, that we learned about.
Right.
He thought yelling at people was management style. So we realized.
Yeah, I've been there before. That was in basic training in the Army.
Oh yeah.
So how did you recover from that then? So did the acquisition happen?
The acquisition happened. We worked it out. The owner of the business, we sort of unwound it, not entirely, but we decided to go our separate ways. And we realized that the partnership wasn't going to work out, so we went our separate ways. And then I had to do some cuts, which were very, very difficult. But I had to really trim back on staff because some of the clients went it was difficult. And when you acquire 4 companies in 22 months. So it was 2 5-person companies and 2 10-person companies. And I was a 10-person company. So we got to 40. We went from 10 to 40 in very, very, very quickly. Right.
Yeah. So
5 cultures under one roof. And it was a mess. And there was already some overlap. So we went from 40 people down to about 27 over a 12-month period. We got really tight. We ended up surviving, obviously. And I think 2015 was our most profitable year in the history of the business, right? So we recovered. The most sleepless year I've ever had was 2013. It was very, very difficult. And then recovered over 2014, 2015, very profitable, sold in 2016. So we once I went through the pain of making it right and I had an offer on the table, I had to take it. I was exhausted.
So that was the MSP business then, right?
That was the MSP. Yep.
So was that maybe the catalyst as to why you left the MSP business?
Yeah, it's a hard business. Service businesses are hard. It's I appreciate people who do it, but I didn't like being the call people made when they had a problem so much, right? I started in that world as a consultant, helping people in a positive way. As we move towards more managed services and reactive support and proactive support, we became more of a vendor, and sometimes I felt like it was just getting called with people's problems. Right? We eventually developed a pretty strong VCIO practice, and we got more into that consultative space again, which I really enjoyed. But we couldn't remove the support side of the equation. We still had the occasional angry client and employee issues and all these things. Whereas in the software world, with Smileback and TimeZest, we don't have that critical. There's nobody's angry at us ever. I've never had anybody angry at me, like in years. It's an amazing thing.
As long as the server's up, everybody's happy.
Yeah, it's like it's Smileback. Are you kidding? People are smiling at it. Think about the product is, right? I'm happy, right? Click happy. And TimeZest has just been extraordinary, right? I mean, TimeZest has just been extraordinary. And so I took all of that knowledge of the entrepreneurial knowledge, and that's where ConnectStrat was really born out of. It was a few of us who got together who were doing EOS, and we removed the EOS hat because that became problematic, and we kind of expanded that set of services to all MSPs and vendors in the channel. So that's been a lot of fun, but it's just been interesting to help. And mostly we're helping folks who also are E-Myth entrepreneurs. They didn't go to business school, right? They need all of this coaching and help in how to run the business. So
that's actually, well, I mean, this is a conversation we have often with I think every MSP has, is the determination of where their position lies in coaching and what they need to address. So, and we actually, funny thing is we have a question we want to start asking people, which is kind of a cheat for you, because the question was, if you want to start all over again with $5,000, what would you do differently? You've already done differently. So I don't know if this is going to work against or for you at this point with this question.
Yeah, if you had me $5,000, I had to start over, what would I go do?
Yes.
I would absolutely go into some kind of a coaching advisory role. So really, I'm doing what I want to do. Don't get me wrong. I'm doing what I want to do. When you get to reinvent yourself a few times, when you're kind of this late in life and you've sold your main business, your decision making, your relationship with money changes, and what's important to you changes, and you don't really take. I'm not willing to go through hell and back to earn a buck, right? Like I was in my 20s. Like I'm going to go do what I want to do. The money will come.
Yeah.
I'll live off however much money comes, right? And that's because I want to be, happiness is more important right now.
Agreed. So with 5,000, what steps are you going to take to do this though?
So literally, what steps would I take if I had $5,000? So these days I would probably I would leverage that to connect with folks who would get me out on social media, and probably so it all go 100% into marketing.
So you'd pay us.
Yeah, I'd pay you.
So Tom, can you get that invoice ready?
Yeah, I'd pay you, and I'd be I'd just get out in front of I think one thing that I realized I did, and I didn't spend money on it, it wasn't really intentional, is I'm here today because I worked on personal brand, right? And it was never really intentional, but you just share, you stay positive, you don't do anything stupid. A lot of people have done that. And you just share everything that you hear, you pull it all together, you continue to give. And eventually folks start listening and appreciating that cycle. And over time, people come to you for that coaching experience, for the background, for the business experience. And eventually I began speaking, wrote a book, and you just kind of parlay all that into this positive momentum, that flywheel of positivity that becomes a business, right? I mean, it all works out in the end. And I think that I was never intentional about that. It was just, I never said no. I got more and more and more involved in all these things, and I'm glad I did. And so I would the $5,000 would help, but it comes down to parlaying my knowledge of the industry,
which you built up well. But for somebody that doesn't have your reputation,
it's a harder question.
I think it costs more to build up a brand than to build a product.
It took 20 years, right? For me, right? It didn't happen overnight. That's for sure.
I think a lot about personal branding with myself and how I present myself, always showing out there. I even take the time today. I got a few thank yous on Twitter as I started just dumping some information to someone who want to get into network engineering, and like, oh, you'll just take the time to answer some random person. I'm like, yeah, just take it, do it. Always be that person. I'm on there spending, because I do it more so in the online than in the physical person space, but it's how I've built the following I have, is constantly thinking about that in some back of my mind. It's not, like you said, it's not intentional. You just kind of do it. You just go, I'm going to avoid any controversy. I'm not going to go just be an ass to someone, because I don't know how that benefits. Go out and help someone and ask for some help. Throw them a couple links, throw them a couple bones over here. Keep moving on. Keep thinking positively. It helps way more than people realize.
I think one thing I realized, and I've been told this a lot, and I didn't. Nothing comes. There's no obvious ROI in it, but we just do it out of excitement, enjoyment, wanting to help, wanting to please people to some degree. But I'm a connector, so like you probably are connectors as well, right? So I can't believe, I step back and I'm like, I know people who are married because I introduced them. I know businesses that bought each other because I put I'm just like, yeah, I know. And so eventually you're the guy who knows the guy, right? And that's a pretty fun thing to be. And again, it just comes out of that, like, I know how to help you, and wanting to respond and help all the time is fun.
Yeah. It's always giving without any expectation. End of story. It's as simple as that. Just go out there, even when I've reached out to Sean for things, that's how me and him connected right away, is we just started just BSing about stuff. Let's just have a couple ideas, toss them around.
Actually, about nothing important. We started talking about, it was whatever. Cause his Tesla is really nice. It's not. Is it a rap or is it a
It's a
paint?
wrap.
Okay, it's the
I
wrap.
got a wrap one too.
Dude, it's so nice. Like, it's cool, right? So I think we were talking about that, and then also the fact that Tom and I both love hot stuff.
Yeah, hot sauces and
Like
things
really
like that.
hot stuff. So we have like a kinship on this stuff and good beer. So that's like you really can't go wrong on any of those, right? But yeah, that's how we kind of started talking about stuff. And then he ended up working with me at my previous company and came in as a partner. And we also did some webinars together and stuff like and now and then I was like, you know what? He said, hey, I was thinking about doing this other channel to start helping other business owners and like what challenges they have. Because I think we can all agree when you watch people speak on stage, it's all roses and shit, right? Which is not the fact. Like they'll ask, like everything is a softball question they ask, right? Like when they ask, if you're being interviewed, Jamison, right now on stage, you already know what you're getting asked, and it's a softball kind of, right? And it's
usually,
and nobody really digs in. Like we want to. That's why I asked you, what would you do with the money? And I want to preface it with like, people aren't like you, which I want to come back to is like, people aren't like you. They're not connectors. So how the hell are they going to spend $5,000 and start a business?
Yeah, it's a different question,
right?
It is a different question. So
you are
literally what I would do in my world right now today is completely different than if you asked me when I was 25. Yep. And now what is a little different about me is I'm not an E-Myth entrepreneur. I did go to business school. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a developer. I'm none of those things. I'm actually just a business guy, right? So, but I will go back to, I would, if I just had a check for 5,000 and I had no idea, going back to when I was 25, I didn't have a specific skill that I knew that I could parlay into anything, right? Like I had a passion. So I'd say, follow that. My passion is I'm a geek. I'm a Tesla geek. I'm badly and kind of computers and my stupid phone I'm addicted to. So it's all those things, right? But there's a reason, right? I'm a gadget geek. So I would actually probably not have changed what I did, which is I went in and I started finding people who just needed a little bit of my help. And I created my IT consulting company. If I were back that young again, I would go back and do that exact same thing. Now, what would I literally do with the $5,000? If I didn't have a business, I had $5,000. There's a couple underpinnings you have to take care of. There's like $1,000 that you got to spend just to set up a business, right? So if I get really, really literal with you, this stuff isn't free, right? You've got to set up a business. You've got to find QuickBooks. You got to subscribe to a handful of SaaS apps. I mean, right off the bat, you can run a business if you do nothing and have no revenue, but you could set up a business for probably a couple grand a year. Yeah. But there's half your money right off the bat.
And I always say get a good accountant, because you think any coding's complicated. Look at the IRS tax code, man. I've been paying a good accountant since I started because I don't want to be in trouble.
Yep. And I didn't really need one until I had a little bit of revenue, but you're absolutely right.
Let's not talk about taxes. Right. I'll start sweating if we start talking about taxes. I'll be in a position. I am tired. I just don't understand. I don't understand how you always owe money. I swear I'm giving them all my money.
Yeah, no, it doesn't make sense.
I'm like, I made $10, I paid $15, and I still owed another $5 afterwards. How's that even happen? I don't get it. I'm doing something wrong here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I think after the fundamentals, which is probably 40-50% of that money, it goes right back into marketing.
Yep.
Like, what are you going to do, right? You have to be able to figure out how to get in front of people.
And can we change the word from marketing to just business development as a whole?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, because marketing is very vague, right? But so is business development to a degree. But I feel like business development is the journey between marketing and sales.
Growth, marketing, and sales. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's the bridge of the gap, right? Is business development between marketing and sales. And marketing has no relevance if there's not somebody there, something to talk about. We'll be having another interview with Jay McBain in the near future here. He's actually a friend of mine. We were talking the other day, and he goes, you come to a certain stage in your life where you realize you're the product. You are the product, not anything else. You are the product, and it changes everything at that point. Kind of back to being a connector, right? You're the product. You're the one that's connecting the dots and bringing the people together and finding like-minded people, or finding value adds from Tom to me, for instance, or something. And that changes everything.
It also changes when people start with this whole concept of, oh, and the people who are kind of dismissive of business a little bit and go, well, it's all about who they know or who they know. I'm like, yeah, it is in some extent. Go get out and know people. That is, circling back to where you connect with all the entrepreneurs, organizations you belong to, places where other entrepreneurs gather. Being in those circles is not an impossible task. Most of them welcome you in there.
I did it.
Yeah.
I did it. And I came from the Army and didn't start doing software technology jobs until I was 30 years old, which was, only 2 years ago, of course, because, same time that James started his business. But yeah, I didn't know anybody or anything. And as a matter of fact, I only found out what an MSP is because one of my friends that is an MSP here in Pittsburgh, I didn't know what the hell he even did. I knew he was an IT guy. That's all I knew. And he was ridiculously successful for years. And this is, I'm talking about years ago. He still is now. And he's like, I'm losing a client. And I'm like, so what? He's like, yeah, they're like 60% of my revenue or 40% of my revenue or something. I was like, how? And he's like, how many clients do you have? He's like 6 or 7. I'm like, you have 6, 7 clients. And he was doing like a couple $1 million a year. So he was really good. And this was easily 15 years ago. And this is before MSP had a term, I guess. At this point, it was just the IT provider of sorts, right? And I was like, dude, I don't get it. Like, how are you? And he's part of like all the country clubs and, sportsplex and this, yep. but he makes zero business out of any of it. And I'm like, I don't get it, man. And so like, he asked me to help my consultant for him. And I was like, you need like a sales and business development strategy. I spent 6 months helping him because I can't work with him. Like, we're friends and it's just not a good thing. Right. But it came down to, he had to hire somebody so he could shut up, basically, that he could say, talk to Jim. Jim's the guy. That's who you talk to. Like, yeah, I'm playing hockey with you now. We're not gonna talk about business because I will give you stuff for free. Yeah. I love you guys. I love this. And I'm just going to hook you up because yeah, sure. Why not? No, talk to Jim. He can help you. And he would leave the whole conversation, but it took me 6 months to get him to start doing that. Like, it was literally a fight. Like, we built a process, we built a hiring process, we built a coaching process that was around business development and sales and marketing. And I said, now let's hire this guy. We developed him. And even then, that guy, Jim, he was a young dude. He was nice. He was great. And he was like, I need Chris to get out of my hair. I need him to stop. He gets on a call and he jacks everything up, and I'm like, dude, sign off on this process. If you don't, you got to pay the difference in commissions to the guy that he would have made if you wouldn't have talked. And he was like, no, I'm not doing it. I was like, well, that's what you have to agree to. If then you stay, and like, literally, because the deal that he was closing would drop 45 to 50% because of Chris getting on, because he loved the people.
When he gave it away.
Yeah. It's like giving things away.
Yeah.
So I was like, if you do that, if you get involved in any part of the sales process, other than introductions, you don't walk away, you can't tell them numbers or anything. You say, here's Jim. I said, you have to pay what the commission would have been. And that was in the contract for Jim and Chris. They had to sign it. Dude, it was difficult, man. It was hard. But the point is, in the end, like, I didn't know what this stuff was. I came into this not knowing anybody. Yeah. I remember the first conference I went to was Channel Partners Expo. And I worked for my Matrix then in Harvard. Like, just go. And I'm like, I worked in sales enablement at that point for a few months. I'm like, okay, what do I do there? He's like, I was like, do we have a booth? He goes, no, here's some pamphlets. Take it with you and just go talk to people. I know. I walked into this place. Luckily, it was St. Patrick's Day. And they had the bar crawl going on. So I just started drinking with people. Like, I was like, let's have a drink. Yeah.
Good way to get connect with people.
Yeah, now they ask me to speak on stage. They think I'm, they put me on these panels to talk about expertise of stuff. Again, it's just, everybody there is there to help each other. They all were trying to figure out how to connect and work together and complement each other. That's a fact.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. You know that. I mean, how many people have you met, Jamison, from just walking around and just?
Oh, I can't count. Yeah, that's what I do. Literally what I did today. I'm down here at the conference, not with a booth today, just as a guest of another vendor. And I just walked around all morning and all night last night, went out, Nashville, hard not to.
I saw your pictures. I think you were
with my voice a little bit.
You were with Cynthia Schreiner and them yesterday? Is that who you were with yesterday? I think it was a picture of you guys at the bar.
Of who?
Was it Cynthia Schreiner and them from
Yeah, a bunch. Yeah, it was. A bunch of vendors from different bunch of ex Connectwisers. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, I saw that. I was fun. A little jealous. A little jealous.
But that's exactly right. I walk around. People are in session. You walk around, talk to all the vendors that when nobody else is, right, and just say hi and go out, dinners tonight. It's just it's way more the socialization of how all this works that starts to build that brand, right? And that's a really it's enjoyable. All of a sudden, it's like, hey, I'm coaching a client, and they're interested in moving a certain direction. It's like, hey, I know 2 vendors who do that, or I've got this friend who does it. Pretty soon, you're connecting the dots for them, and it all comes back, right? So what this conversation is reminding me of is when I joined HTG in 2006 or something like that, a very long time ago, 16 years ago. The very first speaker I heard was Bob Berg, who wrote The Go-Giver, right? So I mean, that's exactly what we're talking about, right? Yep. It's like that's the like doing that without expectation. It all kind of comes back. It's almost like a karma book.
That's from that book.
It's from that book.
I've been reading that book for years, and then I meet Arlen Sorensen.
Yeah,
there's a section about him in the book. I mean, he's that guy.
He's that guy.
He's that guy, and I actually like that book so much. I gave it to my daughters when they were like, my daughters in her 20s, my older ones. I'm like, you guys read this book. Yeah. One of them was like, this is stupid, right? I was like, at that age, she's like, it's stupid. I don't even know. My other was like, this is amazing. And like she actually like embodied it, which was cool. But it is a great book. And so HTG, which that's something good to talk about real quick here, which is now Evolve. You and your coaches are major pieces and parts of this too. So why?
Well, I think that there's a bevy of places that you can get information and learn and grow, and you never should stop, right? I mean, through your entire life, never stop learning and growing, right? You can always change and better yourself. But I think that as a business, I viewed HTG as like, I went to business school, but I didn't get an MBA. I viewed it as like my pocket MBA, right? Like I learned this business through peer groups, through being with people. Now I'm in I think conferences, peer groups, coaching, consulting. I mean, there's all these resources out. I think until you learn that they're there, you live in this silo. Like I know when I started to build my business, I just knew what I was passionate about and I wanted to help people. And that's how I started the business. I had no idea that this community was out there, right? And it has blossomed since I started. Everybody's kind of connected. Most people know it's there now, but you've got to embrace it and jump into it. You're right. There are 30,000 MSPs. Well, they should. There's not that many in these peer groups. There's like 1,000 or something. It's amazing that there aren't more, right? It's shocking to me that people aren't doing this more.
Do you think it's because they're concerned? Again, there's hundreds of peer groups out there, right? And what I've always seen with peer groups is they talk about metrics, how to make money, how to market, which is great. That should be part of the conversation.
Part of it.
But when you're MSPs, they hate learning about that, even though they know they need it. They'd rather talk about the new server that came out, even though they don't need that either, or the gadget, like you want to talk about, right? And that's so. And I spent some time at Jumpstart, and I was like, you know what, this isn't the same kind of peer group, because they talk about their legacy plan, they talk about your life, which
that's what EO is for me, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, actually, Tom and I talked about this the other day, just on the side, and he's of the same mindset as far as he's already looking at his legacy plan, the EO. He's looking at this and saying, this is where I want to be 20, 30 years. That's why he started doing what he's doing. He also acknowledged, he said it many times, even today, he said, hire the other person. Yeah. Don't be that person. I'm good at this. I'm not good at this, right? And
it takes you way too long to figure out what you're good at. If you can figure it out that earlier in life, you'll be more successful.
First off, we're guys. We're not fast at anything we get to like that. I mean, it's where we develop late in life. That's why women, like my daughters, are far surpassed me at their ages than I was at that age. I think they're more responsible. My 13-year-old, I feel like, is smarter than I am, and far more responsible than I am, I think. So we're only one level removed from like Cro-Magna.
Yeah,
it's true.
I mean, really, my knuckles are pretty close to the ground already, and I think probably with age, my back will probably start to bend over a little more, and I'll probably be there. So, just saying. So we got to throw a couple plugs out here for you, Jamison, because we got to wrap this up. You have your website where you look like a GQ model, JamisonWest.com. I'm not jealous at all. Yeah. So
we'll leave links to everything, including the Pitch It. We didn't mention it earlier. That will be there. That links to that. So that Pitch It event, is it still, as of right now, more people can still apply?
Yeah. Registrations to the end of the month. Okay. Oh, and to add to this, by the way, we had Gene on another interview last week, which we did post. I informed him what you said. that you really now at this point, your lifelong ambition is to basically beat Gene. So you guys will be coaching against each other and to pitch it for the 3 finalists whenever we get to that point. He's really excited because he feels you have no chance.
No chance.
I'm just saying. So I'm just saying what Gene said. He asked us not to publicize that. He said on the side, but I told him in good conscience, I couldn't hide that from you. So he said you have no.
He's here in Nashville somewhere. I haven't seen him yet.
Oh, he is. I know he is. So yeah, you should probably go up and probably like punch him in the face because he's talking behind your back and you don't want anybody to know. But he said you have no chance in winning and beating his team. It doesn't matter what team he has. He said it could be paper clips and he will still beat you with paper clips. I'm just letting you know. So
it'll be good. It'll be good.
Yes. And we added on Callan Sapien to the head coaches also.
Yeah, I know Callan very, very, very well. So
yeah,
he beat him as well. All right, it's on.
You can beat him as well. Is that what?
Yeah, I got it. I got this.
This is recorded. No matter what, this has to be on there. And I'll tag Callan later. That's fine.
Perfect.
So yeah, we'll have Callan on to get his rebuttal because I think this is awesome.
Perfect.
Hear you guys all talk about this.
And maybe we'll get all of them together and let's watch him duke it out.
That would be great. Like seriously, like with those actually physically together was like those sumo suits.
Oh yeah,
that would be way better for me.
Let's do it.
So JamisonWest.com, you have several businesses you're actually actively engaged in.
We'll get links to all those in the description. He's got a lot going on.
Yeah, Jamison has a lot going on, dude. So he's the epitome of what this channel is about. So we're gonna have to bring you back for a live stream down the road because when we post this, I asked that you be engaged on this to look on because we get a lot of comments.
All right.
And we ask people what they want to hear. So again, and I'm publicly saying this again, anybody that wants to hear more about Jamison or has any questions that are good, bad, or indifferent, or want to call him out on not being really good at GQ, you can by all means make comments and we will bring Jamison back for a second round for sure.
Yeah, to the rebuttal of those. So sounds like fun.
Perfect.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us and see you next time.
Thanks all.